One thing that I promised I would do in this video, that I intend to keep that promise, is I said I would read people's questions about the album. Let me check real quick if I've gotten any new ones on Twitter. I did get a new one on Twitter. Foobloy asks, why do they call it oven when you oven the cold food? Of out hot eat the food. Who's to say? I don't have the galaxy brain required to answer that, but no, it looks like nothing else has come through. So, my friends, the first single from the album is out today. If you want to give it a listen, check the link in the description below. If you don't want to give it a listen, I don't know what to tell you. You're incorrect. I am excited and nervous and curious to see how it's going to be received, and I'm mostly excited is what I'll say. I've spent so much time on this album, so much time working through everything that it's if you hear some jingling, it's because Weibo is playing with his game. It's like got a fake butterfly on it and it spins, and he's just nuts about it. I already talked a little bit about the theme for these, but just to reiterate, both of these songs are about my return to music. This time it'll be different, kind of addresses what I've gone through to get here. All I Can Do kind of addresses what I'm gonna do from here on out. I made these the first single because it's some of the most, I would say, approachable music on the album. These songs are some of the more clear cut. So if you feel like these are not for you, I definitely encourage you to check out the next single too, but I feel really solid about all of it. I feel like the lyricism is feeling good. I feel like the concepts and the themes of everything are really solid, that I think they're gonna resonate with people. I'm just excited. Click the link in the description below to go check out the new single. It's called This Time It'll Be Different. The B-side, All I Can Do. I alluded to this before, but there is a live stream where you can see me actually come up with the song idea in the first place. It's about 3 hours long. I did it like a year ago, 2 years ago. You can see me from scratch, open up my software, and write what is ultimately going to become All I Can Do. So if that sounds like it might be interesting to you, I'm going to leave the link for that in the description as well. So let's get to the questions. Ahmed Kamal, sorry if I'm butchering that pronunciation, I am American, asks, congrats on your album. Can you please make videos about Bipolar II? Yes, I am going to be making more videos about that. Right at the beginning of 2020, during COVID, I went off my meds. That was an interesting experience. So I'll definitely make a video about that. I'll make some other videos about other things that I have learned since being diagnosed with Bipolar II. I'm definitely gonna be sharing more about that. Thanks for asking that, Ahmed. Kaylin Darnell says, can't wait for everyone to hear this incredible album. This is my best friend in the whole world / roommate. Are you thinking of doing more live shows in the future? I miss seeing you perform. Yes, as soon as I kind of get all my ducks in a row for this release and the music video and a couple other projects that I haven't even announced yet, as soon as I get all that sorted, the very next step is getting live shows started. Yes, that's going to happen. I also want to do a live show that is specifically for my online fans that are not necessarily able to come to Colorado to see me perform. So if that sounds like something you would be interested in, definitely let me know in the comments below. I have some really good ideas for what the live shows for The Comfortable Dark are going to be like. So I'm excited to start sharing that with everybody. Cody R asks, is one of the singles I Don't Wanna Go. For those of you that aren't familiar with that song, it's another song that I made on a Wednesday live stream. You can see pretty much, again, the genesis of the song from nothing to more or less the structure that it has now. I really thought about it. I think it is one of the strongest songs on the album. I just had to make the tough decision to choose the 6 songs that I did. Hopefully people that listen to the full thing are just as excited about that song as they would be if it had come out in a single. Not one of the singles, but it is on the album and I think it sounds great. So I'm excited for you to hear that, Cody. For those of you that don't know, this particular Cody is the reason this song has endured. I made it during a live stream and was kind of like, it's okay. And Cody was like, no, you don't understand. The song is amazing. And I believed him. Ahmed Ramadan, again, if the pronunciation is bad, I apologize, says, you've been teasing us with this album for a long time now. I can't wait to hear it and share with everyone I know. Thank you. Also, I miss your streams on Twitch. Hope that comes back anytime soon. Yes, I mean, I was just talking about the streams. A couple of the songs from the album originally started as songs from streams. I have more of those that I want to do. Once I start getting into kind of like a writing cycle again, I definitely want to do a lot of that writing on live streams because I think that that's fun, and obviously it's yielded some really solid results. Hi, Weibo. Weibo wants some attention. You're in the spotlight. Now is your moment. It's your time to shine. He has no interest in shining. Thanks for your cameo, Weibo. Moving on to the next question. Fubloy asks, what sort of themes did you find yourself exploring whilst writing and recording? Fubloy actually has a couple questions, so I'll start with this one. You know, I talked a little bit about this during the last video, but The Comfortable Dark is about darkness, dark music, slow pieces of art, and generally silence and stillness and darkness as these warm, comfortable spaces that are actually very relaxing for me and not haunting or spooky or dark in this way that a lot of people tend to think about them. So that was the main thing. I also ended up referencing a lot of the Tao Te Ching. For those of you that aren't familiar, Lao Tzu, or perhaps a collection of writers that have become known as Lao Tzu, wrote this, I want to say something like 500 BCE, but don't quote me on that. And it's a collection of essentially poems. It's an amazing piece of art, and I live my life as much as I can in alignment with that book. So a lot of the lyrics are sort of about the Tao and, you know, being in alignment with it. And I'm always a little squeamish about referencing things from a culture that I'm not a part of. There's definitely a discomfort there. The particular version that I've resonated a lot with is the Stephen Mitchell translation. It's not the most pure translation. I definitely think it's a valid criticism of it that it takes some artistic liberties, but I think it's written in such a way that the concepts in the Tao Te Ching become more accessible to a Western audience. And being part of that Western audience, I appreciate that. I first got my copy of it when I was in rehab for opiate addiction when I was 18. I read it and liked it, and every time I've read it since then, it resonates with me more and more. There's sets of poems that they're called chapters. Anytime I flip open the book to a random chapter, it just feels like it resonates so much with my life. Now, before I talk about this, I do want to say the first thing in the Tao Te Ching basically says, the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. So that basically just means if you're talking about it, it's not the actual thing. So let me just preface everything that I'm about to say with the context that any description of this is going to be imperfect. One of the core ideas is that you act without intention, basically rather than having reasons and logic and concepts behind what you do. I don't know if the term Wu Wei predates Taoism or is after Taoism, but kind of this non-action concept that doesn't neatly translate into English. But the idea basically is you are doing something without needing to think about that you're doing it. So it's kind of like flow state. For example, for me in the studio, when I go into the studio, I'm not like, I'm going to put a kick drum and I'm going to put a snare drum and I'm going to make a break beat and this is going to be a hip hop inspired song. I know there are a lot of producers that work that way. I am not one of those producers. For me, I open it up, I start messing around with stuff, and I don't think basically at all about what I'm doing. I just sort of start throwing stuff together until I like how it sounds. And that is a way of being. The right action just arises naturally. It doesn't need to be described and justified and given reason. It is just the right action in that it is what arose naturally from the moment. So like I said, that's imperfect as a description. The reason I share it with you at all, because normally I don't like talking about Taoism, both because I think I am not the person to ask about it, and because talking about it always sort of dilutes the message in a way that I don't love. It helps to interpret the lyrics through that lens of a Taoist perspective. One of the things in Taoism, and even more so in Zen Buddhism, which is sort of like the spiritual successor to Taoism, is illustrating the truth through contradiction. It's not this, but it's also not that. It isn't black, it isn't white. So what is it then? I tried to bring a lot of that energy into the lyrics of the album as well. The contradictions of things that we believe about the world and things that we believe about ourselves, sort of rejecting the notion that we are going to be able to tick a bunch of little boxes that describe our relationship to the world and our experience of it. So that was a very long answer to that question, because so many of the songs reference Taoism or Zen Buddhism. I even hesitate to call them philosophies because the more direct translation is more like a way of liberation. A lot of this stuff gets lost in translation, which is a pain because it's already kind of hard to understand. If what I just said sounds like a bunch of nonsense to you, I get that. Like I said, it's imperfect talking about it. But thematically, it's what I was exploring. Fubloy also asks, what sort of tunes were you listening to get you inspired? For this album, obviously I listened to a ton of Massive Attack. Massive Attack is my favorite band pretty much of all time. Some of you that know me from Evoke know that I did a cover of Teardrop a really long time ago. Obviously, I listened to them a ton, took a ton of inspiration from trip hop in general. I've been listening to a lot of drone music, a lot of the stuff on Atrium Carceri's label, Cryo Chamber. They can be like 10, 20-minute long songs of just like droning ambience that is just, for me, me, very relaxing. There's a song on the album called Interstice that has kind of a similar energy to a lot of the Atrium Carceri, Cryo Chamber, Hilliard, Proto U. Mount Shrine, I think, is especially incredible. He has it's an album called Secluded Loops. A lot of really good use of field recordings and just spatial dynamics. I love drone music. I listen to it all the time. It was pretty much all I listened to last year. A lot of hip hop. Smino is incredible. No Name is incredible. Milo, obviously an incredible rapper. I can post some links to some of this stuff. Coda the Friend. I think one of the things that I was hoping to do with this record was basically in the mid-2000s, the original sort of genesis of trip hop, they were taking the hip hop sound of the time, blending it with the electronic sound of the time. A lot of it was very approachable and chill, stuff like Lemon Jelly, but some of the stuff like Massive Attack or Tricky went to this really sort of dark, kind of cool, grungy, punk-influenced place, drawing inspiration from kind of the more alt-rock scene of the time, artists like, you know, Radiohead and Muse. I feel like that energy hasn't really carried through into modern music as much. So basically what I'm trying to do is recreate that same sort of punk, hip-hop, electronic music fusion, but drawing from the sounds that are present in today's music. So hip-hop doesn't sound the same right now as it did in the mid-2000s. Alternative rock doesn't sound the same right now as it did in the mid-2000s. Electronic music doesn't sound the same as it did in the mid-2000s. Bringing a more modern approach to how to blend them was one of the things I wanted to explore. Karen asks, is there a song you're most excited to hear the response to? Do you have any hunches on what will stand out to people? I'm really curious to see how people feel about the second single. Baptize is the name of the second single. That's coming out a week from today, next Friday. I think it's maybe one of my best songs ever. It's very different than a lot of what I've done in the past, and there's a lot of tones and characteristics to it that are going to be unfamiliar, I think, to people. Different in its own way. I'm excited to see how people feel about that one. As far as favorites on the album, I've shown it to a few of my friends. Different people have different favorites from the album. Some people really like All I Can Do. Some people really like Baptize. There's a song on there called Limbo with Always Apollo, and that one's just wild. There's this orchestral breakdown in the middle that I'm really excited to hear what people think about. In general, I actually have no idea what the standout tracks from this album are gonna be. There's so many, and I'm so proud of all of them. It's hard to know. Those of you that take the time to dig into the album are gonna be really happy that you did. I'm really proud of this as a piece of work. You can start exploring that album today by listening to the single. Again, the link is in the description below. It's called This Time It'll Be Different with the B-side, All I Can Do. Let me know what you think. Post your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks everybody for making the time. Thanks for listening. I'm excited to share even more of this album with you and to make more videos, explore some of the topics we talked about. I adore you all. It means the world that you've watched this far. I'll see you in the next one. And then I spin as though I'm going somewhere, but I'm gonna be editing this video for the next several hours. Fuck.